Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Revolutionary Girl Utena, or Utena, however you pronounce it, episode 2. So, back in June, the beginning of June, a couple months back, we did a first impressions reaction to episode 1. And I mentioned in that we were going to eventually get to the rest of the series, and that's what we're doing. I really enjoyed episode 1. I thought it was a really good, strong first episode that introduced the characters and the idea well. And I'm definitely interested to see where this goes. I'm admittedly cautious with an older series like this because of the art style, the voice acting. A lot of that stuff just isn't going to be quite on the level that I'm used to with a lot of anime nowadays. So admittedly, that might affect things in terms of my enjoyment. And even with a lot of the older anime that I do still like and do still like to watch, like Yu Yu Hakusho as an example, I watch the dubs for those mostly. So it's like the voice acting is exceptionally different, just notably so. But either way, I am excited to get to more of this. As we discussed with the first impressions reaction, this series is extremely well known for being a pioneer in queer characters and plot lines in anime. Having come out in the 90s and everything, it revolutionized the idea that, well, you could have queer characters in anime and queer ideas and, again, plot lines and everything. And even if it's not the best example, even if it's not the most amazing representation, the fact is it's there and that people still talk about it. And people still look on this anime extremely fondly with that as one of the core reasons. I mean, that's just undeniable. So I don't expect this to have like as tight of representation as something like Carol and Tuesday, where it's just excessively well handled to a very, very positive way. But nonetheless, the fact that it is there still says something. And the fact that it is there is still important. And I can't wait to see what they do with it. But I guess we'll just have to find out. This series definitely has potential from the first episode, and I'm hoping that everything goes well enough to where it just ends up being really good. It just ends up being like really impressive and surprises me. Now, the series is also, just real quick before we get this going, the series is also like 39 episodes long. I think it's somewhere like, it's not quite 40 episodes. It's like an episode or two shorter than that, which is like, why don't you just bump it up? Like, it just feels like that's just a weird number to leave off on. But it's something like that. So I will say, if there's any point where I feel like I need to take a break in it, I will, and come back to it. And hopefully I just continue to enjoy it enough where I don't even consider dropping it. But I'm just saying, if it because of its length, it might be one of those shows where I need to take a break at some point to just keep myself from getting too bored of it, basically. Just to keep things on this channel flowing as well. But we can tackle that when we get to it, because again, this is still only episode 2. So that all being said, though, let's just get into this and hope for the best, and hope that this series continues to impress me going forward. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I looked something up because I wanted to know. So Utena and Anthe are 14, but apparently Sayanji and them in the student council are like 17 years old. Like they're high school seniors. And I was just curious about that because they're noting about being in middle school, and I guess it was just referring to like Anthe, Utena's friend, but the actual student council. So I assume then that this academy, Otori Academy, is probably a like multi-age academy. I don't know how else to word it. Like it's both middle school and high school, and there are schools like that in real life and everything. So it's not like too out of the question or out of the ordinary or anything. It's just like I guess maybe just here in America, it's like it's not super common. Usually, middle schools and high schools are separated to some degree, at least from my experience. But a lot of times they can also be like right next to each other. Even that was the case for one of the high schools I went to. It was like literally right next door to the middle school. So it can happen. But yeah. So this episode, we focused on Utena getting her dorm room and everything, and finding out that she's been put in kind of this dorm that hasn't been used for 10 years. It's basically just completely abandoned. And so she goes to it and finds out that the only other person who's in the dorm with her is Anthe. Since she won the duel, Anthe now is engaged to her by the rules of the Rose Bride and all, which I really think is a really like bad thing. The idea of a person just being like automatically engaged to someone just based on if they win a duel is kind of toxic. Because it's literally against their will. It's against their choice. And I wonder if that's going to be like a part of the narrative at all. I wonder if Utena and Anthe are going to like discuss that idea. The idea that this is entirely against like her will here. That it's not by her decision. That she's not choosing her partner or her future wedded partner, but that it's literally chosen for her. It's basically an arranged marriage. And it's fucked up. Arranged marriages always are. So I'm wondering if they're going to cover that at some point. But Anthe and Utena get to know each other, and we see Anthe has a friend, which she calls Choo Choo a friend, but it's basically equivalent of a pet still. Choo Choo is, I guess, supposed to be a monkey, though it's like the size of a mouse, and it's like I'm just kind of unsure. I'm kind of unclear about it. It seems to almost have a very comic relief element to it, like a lot of animal side characters have in a lot of shows or anime, or especially Disney cartoons, Disney movies. You see those a lot in Disney movies, just these random side animal characters who are just there for some comic relief. So far, it seems like Choo Choo's going to be the same, but I'm hoping that Choo Choo has more to them later on, and actually ends up being kind of like having a point, basically. Sorry about all the yawning. But we see that Utena plans to throw her next duel because she's challenged again by Saionji, and she was really given no choice. So she says she's going to throw it because she doesn't really want to be involved in this. But once the duel actually comes around, she can't do it. She can't just throw it. And she claims it was for Choo Choo, but we know it was actually for Anthe. With how clear it was, how much Utena would have noticed that Saionji is an abusive shitbag who deserves to be sounded with a, I don't know, a cactus or something painful. He deserves pain. Um, Utena would likely has noticed that. In fact, well, obviously has noticed that, and so she couldn't just like throw the match and put Anthe back into that situation. Like I was saying, that like from any level that would be wrong. Even if you didn't want to become involved in this kind of thing anyway, it's like throwing the match purposefully and forcing this poor girl to go back into an abusive relationship, an abusive, toxic, arranged marriage situation would be absolutely irresponsible and immoral. It 100% would be, with no room for questioning. And we know Utena is not like that. We know she's a good person. We know, like, she cares about people. And so we knew she wasn't going to actually do that, but it did worry me for a second. Um, and so it's like, I'm glad that she did end up choosing to win instead. And, like, one of the interesting things to me is, like, this series makes it very clear without like necessarily needing to blatantly spell it out for us. It makes it super clear that it is extremely queer focused and friendly. And let's be honest, one of the biggest things that note that in both of these episodes and so far are the way that Utena gets the sword of Dios from Anthe. There is no heterosexual explanation for that. The sword comes out of Anthe's bust, for one, which Utena has to reach into to grab the sword and pull out. The way she holds Anthe when she does it, I mean, I use that as a thumbnail to emphasize this point and all. Just everything surrounding that scene, it's almost like I guess the equivalent of a magical girl transformation, but it's excessively gay in the best way. It's like I said, there's no heterosexual explanation for it. It is embracing the gay in such a blatant and just completely unashamed way. And while it doesn't actually say anything like extensively, you also see throughout the episode Utena blushes at Anthe multiple times. And I mean, you also see Utena's friend, who I can't remember the name of right now, also seems, even if just jokingly, has some level of interest in Utena. One of the first scenes of this episode was a bunch of girls blushing at and simping over Utena because she's so cool. It's like this show it is very unabashedly gay. And it's like, yeah, again, it's not beating us over the head with it, and the representation may not be as modernly progressive as maybe we would like. It may never go like all the way with that, but the fact is it's still very much there. And it's not even really like hiding it all that much. It's super obvious. And again, for its time, for the time this series came out, it's revolutionary. I think I made that joke in the first episode too. Um, but it is. It is absolutely revolutionary for anime. For a 90s series like this to have that kind of representation and be so unabashedly unashamed about it. To be just so matter of fact and just treat it like it's okay. Like never once, even outside of just questioning the entire thing in and of itself, the entire process and whatnot. Never once does Utena or Anthe question the idea of them being engaged. They again, the only thing they question, the only thing Utena questions is the process, the duels, and all of that. But the idea that she's just suddenly engaged to another girl, never even a question to her. It doesn't bother her at all. She never worries about it. It's just like, okay. And I think that's fantastic, honestly. Because it seems like just that kind of thing may be normalized in this world. And I'm saying maybe because it's still only episode 2. There's a lot to still dissect and understand about this world and everything. But it's like that's kind of how it reads to me so far. And if that's the case, that's awesome. Again, especially from a 90s anime. um and of course, you have to talk about just Utena's pure kindness. And I think it's one of the things that really does so far endear me to this series. Um, Utena is just a very genuinely good person. She sees her friend who had a love letter posted in front of the entire school on the notice board. She sees how she's still feeling a little down about it, and her first instinct is to check on her, to just be there for her and see if she's okay. That's not just a good friend, that's a good person. Because what happened to this girl was absolutely terrible. Doing that kind of thing towards anyone is absolutely terrible. So the fact that Utena was just so matter of factly and just so quickly to check on her was beautiful. And luckily the girl was okay and she had found hope within this book that she read. That's great. But still, it's still an amazing gesture for Utena to have done that. And of course, I have to talk about the overly excessive epic music. um, again, I don't remember entirely if the music was like this in the first episode. I assume it probably was, but it is so unnecessarily epic. Like, again, I compared it to like the music you hear for a final boss in a video game, and it's like it's very much like that. Final boss music is usually always a step up from the rest of the enemies and bosses in the game for obvious reason. It's meant to convey this grand scale. You've made it to the end. You've made it to the final boss. This is it. That is the point. That's why final boss music is usually always so grand and epic and of such a higher caliber. And so seeing that it's just episode 2 and just another duel with this Saionji guy, and just the music is still so just fucking epic and just so unnecessarily cool. It's like, why? I'm not complaining though, because it's so fucking awesome that it in some way carves an identity into this series. That the people who made this show, I don't know if this was adapted from a manga or whatnot, but the people who made this show, either way, put so much effort into making these duels seem like a massive deal, which, considering a girl's life and future is basically on the line. It's like that makes sense. It makes sense to showcase these duels as grand and such a big deal and just really intense because this girl is literally on the line in every single duel. Her safety, her future, again, possibly very life it hangs in the balance. So by having this epic boss level music, it shows that yes, these duels, even if they seem like just a random episodic duel, they're still intense and they're still important. They have scale. They have meaning every single time. And I like that. Again, it shows that the creators of this series wanted to go all out, that they didn't want to hold back, that they wanted to make sure you understood the scale of these duels and what they meant. And it's fantastic. So I really just have to give a lot of praise to JC staff for their work on this. The music is fantastic. The voice acting is great too. Like for its time, the voice acting is pretty darn good. It's not perfect. Some of it sounds a little off, but it's pretty damn good for its time. And the animation has a pickup during the duels as well. And again, for its time, it's really good. By nowadays standards, it's not. But the animation picks up really well, and it's like when she is pulling the sword from Anthe, it is epic. It is cool. It is really just majestic and kind of magical. Again, it makes you feel the impact of it. And that's what I like to see. I like to see that everything is given its proper impact, even if it's just another random duel in an episode. I like that. And I think besides just Utena being a great character and just the excessively good production work on this series, I do enjoy the story. That is another reason I like this series so far. While I have definitely not been able to follow along with everything quite yet, involving all of this basically political shit involving the Rose Bride and everything, I get the main gist of it. And again, while I hate the idea of like this girl's life being arranged for her in this way, while I hate that idea and think it's exceptionally gross and horrifying, it makes for a good story because it makes you sympathetic to her character and makes you want to see Utena save her. Like, she's the Rose Bride, but you see Anthe as the princess in need of rescuing. A classic trope that, while some people out there don't really like that much nowadays, it does work. Because it makes you sympathize with and care for the character who's being oppressed in this way. And Utena, you see her as, well, what she wants to basically be. The prince in shining armor, the hero, the one who is there to protect Anthe. And it's like you definitely see that, and you definitely root for her because of it. So it's like, it's exciting, it's fun, it's an interesting story with likable characters that you just get behind. And yeah, there's some goofy comedy at points too, with like goofy 90s anime comedic faces. And it's like, that's fine. It doesn't feel out of place. It feels like it's a moment of levity in between all the intense shit that's going to get your emotions going a little more. um, and I think any good series that does have some intense themes and ideas with it should also have some levity. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I am definitely still impressed by this series. Um, it's not the absolute best in terms of art and animation or voice acting or just in general when it comes to anime. But for its time, it does so much to just impress as a series. From its musical score to its ideas to its representation, it does so much to leave its mark, and it left its mark. God damn it! As I've stated, this series is still not just fondly looked upon by many anime fans. There are many who consider this one of the greatest anime of all time. They consider this right up there with the likes of Cowboy Bebop, which many do consider one of the greatest anime of all time, if not the greatest. They consider this right up there with shows like that. And honestly, I can see why, even at just episode 2. And I don't know how the series is going to go. I don't know how it's going to increase the stakes and whatnot and make it even more exciting and intense. But I can see already why it's popular, why people love it so much, why it's still talked about to this day, over 20 years later, with such fondness, with such admiration. And not even just because of its LGBTQ plus themes, but especially with them. People just look on this so fondly, and it's just left so big of an impact that it's just without a question a legendary series at this point. And so I'm glad that I've chosen to continue this past just the first impressions reaction. And I'm really excited to get into more of this. I'm glad that we got to this sooner rather than later. So for now, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this second episode of Revolutionary Girl Utena? And if you know where this goes, please, no spoilers. I wish to remain spoiler free on this, just to give better reactions and whatnot. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, and thank you so much once again for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.